Hey,
and so that your
darlings.
feet never have any more shit here. The girl was shocked and turned around, looking at the place that had been her home for the last time. She looked at her husband for the last time, hoping that he would change his mind and stop her, bring them back with the baby, and at least listen to them. But that did not happen. Mikhail's cold eyes were dripping with contempt and hatred, and his humiliating smile. She said that everything was really over. Marina turned her gaze to Svetlana, who didn't hide her pleasure. She crossed her arms on her chest. She openly smiled at the girl and rejoiced in her victory. The twinkling eyes of this bitch will forever remain in Marina's memory. This woman is the lover of her husband and was to blame for everything. Because of her, she lost her family, and now there's only one left on the street with the child in her arms. Marina gave herself the word to look into these senseless eyes, to spit into her insolent face, and to express everything she thinks about her. That's all. The fairy tale is over. Was she really a fairy tale? Having held on to sleeping Andriusha, Marina fixed her bag on her shoulder, in which she hurriedly threw away her children's things and shaved her head, barely holding back her tears. But she won't let herself be hurt by tears in front of these terrible people, who didn't even let her say a word in their excuse. Her mother-in-law, Nina Petrovna, never hid how much she hates snow. She was happy to kick her out of the house as soon as she was given a convenient chance. But the most painful thing for Marina was that her husband immediately believed this, which Svetka, and didn't even listen to her, silently pointing at the door. Take your jerk and get out. It was the only thing he said to his wife. After a deep breath, Marina went out of the forged gate, and after a deft click of the massive gate, she finally gave up tears. She wanted to cry from this hopelessness and shout loudly about the terrible mistake that had happened to her. But she restrained herself, allowing the tears to just roll out of her eyes, suppressing her silent sobbing so as not to wake Andrusha up. The thoughts in her head were spinning, from which she was trembling, and a nasty cold of fear was running through her back. Where should she go? How to make a living? And most importantly, where should they live now? How will she cope with a 3-month-old baby? Having left the limits of a private village, where Marina spent the last year of her life, she invented a boarding school to spend the night, calm down, and gather her thoughts. Fortunately, the girl was only at the beginning of June, and the warm, truly summer weather was standing. The night out in the open sky did not scare her, but when thinking about the future, Marina threw cold sweat from the unknown and the realization that she was completely alone in this cruel world. The baby screamed, turned around, and began to cry loudly and abruptly, as if feeling her mother's mood. Having settled on a fallen tree, Marina put the child to her chest, calming him down and praying that, due to stress and anxiety, her milk would not disappear. The only salvation for her son. After getting full, Andrews fell asleep again, and Marina could not close her eyes until dawn, thinking about what to do with her now and how to find the strength to live on. She was reading the names of her friends and old friends who she could ask for help from. But after marriage, there were no such people left. Her husband was against her talking to someone from her previous life, and she didn't argue with him, hoping that later she would be able to persuade him to change her decision. And when the baby was born, Marina left with her head in concern and trouble for him. When the sun was already rising from the horizon, the girl had a plan, the only possible one in her position, and after an hour and a half, for the last money she managed to cover from the child's allowance, she bought a ticket to the bus to the deep, where her late mother's old friend lived. And 2 hours later, she knocked on the door of the village house, hoping that she would not be exposed from here. "Who are you?" A woman standing on the threshold got all dirty, and, holding her hand to her side, she looked at the girl with the child on her hands. "Anna Sergeyevna, hello. I'm Marina, Lita's daughter, your classmate and friend." "Oh my God," the woman screamed, pressing her hand against her lips. Marina, you're so grown up now. How could you? Before her eyes, Marina swam around and she shuddered. Apparently, the stress was overpowering. Sleepy nights, hunger. With one hand, she grabbed the wing of the wing, and with the other, she firmly pressed her son to herself.
Kolya, Kolya, come here, help me.
This was the last thing Marina heard before her legs were bent, and she fell into darkness. Anna Sergeyevna once studied with Marina's mother in the technical school. They were close friends, but after graduation, the girls returned home to different districts, and their communication was reduced to rare letters and phone calls. A couple of times a year they came to visit each other. But 7 years ago, when Marina's parents died, the connection between Anna and her husband was lost, and since then they have not seen each other again. Marina opened her eyes and sat down. Again, when she went down to the pillow, she sighed, trying to understand where she was. When she remembered about her son, she looked around, and when she didn't find him, she jumped out of bed, not paying attention to her weakness and terrible headache. When she ran out of the room, she saw the housewife and her husband in the kitchen. As she gulped tea from the porcelain cups, they whispered quietly. "Where is Andre?" Marina asked in a hoarse voice, and, having cleaned her throat, added, "Where is my son?" Anna smiled and got up from the table, holding Marina's hand. "Don't worry, Marina. We've fed your son, and now he's sleeping tight." The woman took the girl to the bedroom and pointed at the big bed, on which the baby was sleeping peacefully while the girl was sleeping in the bed. "Anna, thank you." The girl threw herself on the woman's neck and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for not kicking us out. We have nowhere to go." In Marina's eyes, tears began to gather and to torn. "I'll feed you, and you'll tell me what happened to you. And what kind of beast drove you out into the street with a child in your arms? And most importantly, for what?" The woman's eyes shone suspiciously, but the warmth and maternal care were hidden behind this shine. Marina came up to her son, and leaving a kiss on his fluffy cheeks, she fixed the blanket. "I changed the diapers." The woman smiled. "What was there without demand in your things?" "It's okay. Thank you." Marina froze. Only now the words of a woman came to her. The eyes of the girl rounded, and she looked at Anna Sergeyevna. "You said you fed him. But how? With what?" "Don't worry, Marina. They fed her with a mixture of baby food. She took it from the neighbor. She recently had a granddaughter, 5 months to the baby, and her milk disappeared. So they feed him with a special mixture. Yours was so swollen that your cheeks almost burst." The woman smiled and looked at the sleeping baby with longing. She pinched her eyes and several times blinked. Anna Sergeyevna sighed and lowered her head. "Let's go, Marina. You need to eat, or else you won't be able to stand at all." After a hearty village lunch, Marina told Anya and Sergey their story. Just like after the death of their parents in an accident, they lived with their grandmother, who died 3 years ago. Just like she, working as a day-off administrator in a business center, met Mikhail, a beautiful, successful, and well-off man. Just like he was looking after her and was grateful for her eternal love. How a few months after meeting, he proposed to marry her. She told how she left the Institute for the future husband's happiness and sold her grandmother's apartment to move to a new one with her husband. How a few months after the wedding, she found out that she was pregnant and her husband brought her home to his mother, while he went abroad for a few months. Told how her in-laws had never loved a bride, how they called her a villager and were so fond of money. They swore that they would never convince their son that a wife like that was not for him. They also proved that the child Marina had carried was and no assurance of honesty and sincere feelings, snogging to her son. The woman did not want to listen and did not hide her contempt and hatred. But despite her cold attitude to her son's wife, Mikhail's mother did not say anything. She wanted nothing to distract him from work, and he could calmly sign an important contract, to which he prepared for more than a month. Because of constant worries, Marina was born before the deadline, for almost a month and a half. Thank God the baby was healthy, and after 3 weeks of observation in the hospital, they were discharged, and they returned home, where the girl was waiting for another blow, which was returned from Mikhail's business trip as if replaced. He was restrained, cold. He practically did not look into Marina's eyes, disappearing more and more often at work. In 3 months since the birth of his son, he has spent with them barely several hours. He rarely came home to spend the night, because he had to do the same job and didn't want to come back to the countryside too late. Mikhail stayed in the city apartment where Marina and they lived after the wedding, and explained that it was more convenient for him. This continued until last night, when Marina's face was covered with an envelope with the DNA test result, which said that Mikhail was not Andrei's father. Without listening to the girl and not letting her say a word, they were put out. I asked him to do a repeat test. Marina cried, wiping her tears on her cheeks. But he didn't listen to me. Anna Sergeyevna, do you believe me? Andrei is Misha's son. I had no one but my husband. Did he believe me? Marina sighed and calmed down. A couple of minutes later, she continued. These are all the search for his mother and this nasty Sveta, his assistant. His mother-in-law always said that she was the best match for him. She must have set up all this. She was watching him, probably, during his business trip, and now he doesn't even want to listen to anything. So do another analysis. Anna Sergeyevna was outraged, holding the girl's hand. Prove that you are innocent. What are you talking about? Marina's head was shaking negatively. Now I will not be humiliated for anything. He did not listen to me when I wanted to prove my innocence. And now it does not make sense. I will never be able to forgive him for what he did. So, girl, stop screaming. We will help you get up on your feet. Anna Sergeyevna tried to be serious, but in her eyes Marina saw maternal care. Andriusha will grow up, you will get a job, and you will definitely need to recover at the institute. We didn't have God's children, and then you fell down like snow on your head, and with a grandson. In memory of Ladaka, we will not leave you, son, in trouble. You called your son after your father. The girl nodded, snorting. Andrei was a good man, decent. His soul was not in your care. It's a pity that God didn't give you to live. The woman kept silent for a short time, lost in her thoughts. I was breathing and shaking my head. We have some money. She sighed, looking out the window. We wanted to go to the sea with Nikolai, but now we're not free, right? Anna Sergeyevna nodded to Marina. Tomorrow Kolya will take us to the city. We'll buy everything we need for the baby. And you need your things. I saw only the kids in your bag. Where are yours? I only took Andriushin's things. I was going to get ready quickly, but I didn't think about myself. All my things are just what I have. I will have to go and take everything that is left in my husband's house. No, Marina protested. I don't want to go back there anymore. Things are just things. I will earn money and buy new things. I took what was expensive for me. Family photos, mom's jewelry, some memorable things from her. I don't need anything else. Everything else was bought for Misha's money, but I don't need anything from him. Only, the girl broke her fingers. She needs to be sent to a divorce, and Andriushin's documents need to be redone. I don't want this man to be his father. Since he has already refused us, everything needs to be done officially. You're so quick, Marina. What if your ungrateful woman will change her mind? What if she wants to return you? I will not forgive him. He caused me such pain. No, he is not in my life from now on. And Andrei will never be in life. I raised my son myself, and thank you very much for your help and support. I will return the money to you as I go to work. And I will definitely finish the institute so that I have an education. Everything will be fine. And we'll help with Kolya as much as we can. And your husband is impotent. He'll pay for everything. And his mother will still be in grief. After all, they say, the poverty will be offended by a heavy sin. A child's crying was heard from the bedroom, and Marina, wiping away her tears, jumped up and ran to her son. But before reaching the room in which the baby was seduced, she returned to the kitchen, ran up to Anna Sergeyevna and hugged her tightly. "Thank you," said the girl. "I will never forget it. Thank you." With a smile on her face, Marina ran to Andrei, leaving the woman with her endless tears rolling down her cheeks. This is how the new life of Marina and Andrei began. In a small village near Voronezh, Anna Sergeyevna and her husband became foster parents for the girl and her baby. Marina helped the woman in the garden, cooked food, cleaned up the house. She went to the city, passed exams, and filed a report for recovery. However, she was transferred to a secondary school, but Marina was very happy about this. In the fall, she was expected to study in the first session. The girl had a second breath, and she believed that everything would be fine in her life. A few weeks later, the new opportunities opened up for Marina in the quiet, rural life. Nikolai, Anna Sergeyevna's husband, who worked as a tractor driver on a farm, came home with news. The woman who used to work at the milk and the milkman's was going to move to her daughter's town, and the workers were looking for her place. The salary is small, but you only need to work 4 or 5 hours a day, a couple of hours in the morning and the same amount in the evening. Not long after, Marina agreed. It was a great option, which was suitable for her. The morning shift started at a.m. and ended at a.m. Along with the road to the farm and back, she should be home by a.m., which means she will have time to wake up Andriusha. The second shift was at the same time, only in the evening. And besides, Anna Sergeyevna could insure her. But Marina thought that by the time the baby would have to be bathed and laid to sleep, she would be back from work. The next day, the girl went to meet the milk farm manager, and after a short conversation, she met the village herders and her pets. And in the evening of the same day was the first day of her work as a milk accountant. The point of the work was to count the liters of milk received from each milk farm and write down the amount of liters of milk. After that, the milk was transported to the dairy farm for further processing. Marina was not delighted with the contingent of farmer workers, but despite the uncensored vocabulary and clearly untruthful state of some of them, everyone was kind to her. The girl understood that it was a temporary solution, which would help her to get up a little and provide with finances. Marina needed money. She planned to postpone and return to the city in the future and will be working all the time, which will allow her to rent a house, buy food and necessary things, as well as pay her daughter-in-law for her son. And the job was, to be honest, not lying. Therefore, Marina did not complain, but only thanked her for giving her such an opportunity. According to Anna Sergeyevna, the girl turned to the lawyer to discuss the money from the sale of her grandmother's apartment, which she, together with her husband, invested in the purchase of a new apartment. But then she was disappointed. The lawyer filed a complaint and found out that the apartment was registered for Mikhail's mother and bought with the money she had bought. That was confirmed by bank accounts. Marina didn't have any proof of money that she had given to her husband. Of course, she didn't think about taking a contract from him or something like that. This news made the girl's fighting spirit go down. She was counting on this money and hoped that it would be a good start to her new life and would be able to thank Anna Sergeyevna and her husband for help. But these hopes were shattered, and the cunning, and as it turned out, the disorder of her former husband. Having put up with the loss, Marina was sad, thinking about how many long months she will have to work on the farm to earn at least for the first time. And given that Anna Sergeyevna paid for the last year of training at the institute, she now also had a debt. With pain in her heart, she took her own terrible position, and the girl realized that she was stuck in a deaf village, and apparently not for a year. And no matter how sad she was still happy that they had a roof over their heads and at least some work. Lawyer Alexey Ivanovich, who was no longer a young man, sincerely wanted to help the girl get out of the situation in which she was clearly deceived, who took advantage of her pure heart and naivety. He suggested fighting and going to the end. But for this, Marina had to file a court report and get a repeat DNA test to prove that Mikhail is the father of the child, and also try to get money from him, which was donated to the sale of the grandmother's apartment, and be sure to pay for the child's food. Marina categorically refused this offer, motivating it by saying that she doesn't want to have anything to do with it, as she expressed to the moron and the cheater. But the girl still asked the lawyer to help her get Mikhail's refusal from the child, to get rid of this man from her life once and for all. She was sure that this problem would not arise, as she had the results of this unfortunate DNA test in her hands. Had nothing to do with her son. As a second examination, Marina was outraged by the news she had brought from the city, saying, "There is something they need." She was shocked by the crumpled paper that was the reason for the collapse of her family. "Marina, calm down. I repeat, to demand from Mikhail that the child be abandoned, we need an independent examination, assigned by the court, where the probability of a mistake will be excluded. But if we do this test, he will know that in fact it was his father." "Yes, that's right. And then we can—" "No, we can't. And what's the point?" Marina grabbed her head. "What if he wants to take my child away when he finds out?" "Yes, such a probability cannot be excluded. But what made you think that your son would be given away? The court is always on the side of the mother. And if it is possible to prove that he did not fit the child at all, then—" "Alexey Ivanovich, wait. I don't want to have anything to do with him, you know? I don't want to. His mother will cling to my child like a madwoman, and it will not be difficult for them to grab another effective piece of paper to defame me. They have money and influence that I do not have. I will not survive if they take Andriusha." The girl kept silent, and after a minute she cried. She was scared. She felt that her husband shouldn't know that Andrei is his son. Otherwise, he will definitely want to take him away. This is what her maternal heart told her, and Marina was ready to go all out, just to leave them alone with their son. "What other options do we have?" Marina looked up at Alexey Ivanovich. Son was worried about sleeping at night, and at 5 she had to get to work. During the day there was a lot of trouble at home, in the evening again work, and at night everything was repeated. Andriusha fell asleep, but after minutes he waved and began to cry, and so until dawn. He fell asleep just when Marina was leaving for work, and woke up carefully to her return. In this mode she lived for almost a month, and with every day, tiredness and lack of sleep have affected the girl's self-esteem more and more. She was getting more and more annoyed with the empty places. She began to make mistakes at work. At home, she was sleeping on the floor, then the soup would be over-salted, then she would look at the milk for porridge, then she would over-fry the meat. Anna Sergeyevna noticed the changes in Marina, but she was understanding and, as best she could, tried to help the child. But Uncle Kolya was not happy recently, and said that he had no peace in his own home and that he couldn't even get enough sleep, not to mention that the trip to the sea had to be postponed for the next year. Marina was very worried that because of them and Andriusha, people had to change their usual lifestyle, and she hoped to find some way out that would not leave them with their son on the street, but would not be embarrassed by people who helped her in a difficult moment. "We can leave everything as it is," said the lawyer. "But sooner or later, there will be a need to get some kind of permission or confirmation from the father. And when the boy grows up, he will start asking questions. He will start asking them, 'Alexey Ivanovich, what will happen if I just leave this business?' Well, I can't say for sure what will happen, but, for example, if you want to go abroad, you will need the father's permission. When you enter the kindergarten or school, you need to show your father's data when you fill out the documents, when you get to work, and so on." "Oh my God," Marina said. "We'll never get rid of this nasty man. We can't just do it anyway, can we? There's another option. If Mikhail himself says he wants to give up on the child, But to do this, you need to go through the procedure of deprivation of parental rights and write a refusal. There are many vows, but this is possible if desired. Many vows? Marina was impressed by this opportunity. What exactly needs to be done? You need to file a complaint to court, to the Public Health Service, and to the registry office. Confirm the notary, and then maybe... Alexey Ivanovich was silent. Maybe, that is, it does not give guarantees. The court may not meet the requirements. And in this case, it will most likely be necessary to do an examination. I see. Marina dropped her head, which refused to think on her hands. In general, there is no way out. Well, Marina, there is always a way out. You still think about my offer. Okay, I'll think about it. Thank you, Alexey Ivanovich. How can I thank you? How much should I owe you? Well, my dear, there's nothing to thank you for yet. I'm giving you a consultation for free, but if you decide to sue your husband, I'll take full credit from him. Don't worry. As a cause of moral harm, we'll take it. You and Andriushka will also get it easily. Okay, I'll think about it. Thank you. Marina decided to think over the lawyer's proposal as follows and make a decision. A few days passed like a moment, and the girl could barely think. She was overwhelmed by fear, apathy, her hands were down, and she didn't see the way out of the situation. The last drop was the one that came out of Uncle Kolya, who broke into the room where Marina and Andriusha lived and shouted loudly, "Shut him up already! What kind of mother are you? He doesn't keep quiet at all. I have no more of my own. No peace in my own home." After knocking on the door loudly, Anna Sergeyevna's husband went to spend the night in the bathhouse. The woman ran after him, counting her husband's heartlessness, but it only led to a quarrel. Before the door of the bathhouse was knocked, Marina heard the words that were thrown at her by Nikolai. "But I can't do that anymore, Anya. How long will this girl live with us? You're in the way of them. If you can't handle the child, let him go to the orphanage. There are trained people there. Let him find a normal job and rent a place for himself. And when he gets settled, he'll take the boy. Why should I endure all this? Who is she to me? Choose Anna, either me or a girl with her." The woman never came into the room, and Marina was waiting for the morning to come with a heart attack, because she knew that in the morning they would be outside again. She saved up some money, but that would hardly be enough for several days of living in the city. What can we say about rented housing? When her son cried again, Marina was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She was putting the baby on her breast, but he continued to cry. Marina was horrified and found out that she had lost her milk. She cried out loud, not understanding what she was going to do. Marina was hysterical, and only a sedative shot could bring her to her senses, which was injected by the village doctor who came after Anna Sergeyevna's call. For a few minutes, Marina was sitting in the ceiling, enjoying the silence. She didn't want to think where her son was, and why it's so quiet in the house. She just wanted to enjoy a few minutes of silence and peace, and then she reached out to her phone, lying on a bedside table, and dialed the number she already knew. "Alexey Ivanovich, I agree. I agree to fight. I agree to the court and to the examination. I want to get my money back and give it to Aliminta. Just promise me that you and I will never be separated." The decision was made, and there was no way back. Marina just prayed that this decision would not turn against her and her son. "Get ready, Marina." Anna Sergeyevna looked into the room with her eyes teary. "Let's go to the city." "Why?" The girl was scared and opened her eyes. "Your new apartment is too much to make up for." "What apartment?" Marina was grumbling. "I'll tell you on the way. Get up. We have little time until Nikolai returns from work." When the husband was mentioned, the woman shyly lowered her eyes. She could not forgive him for putting her before such a choice. "I have already called a taxi. It will be here in minutes. Andriushka is with the neighbor. Let him stay. He is still sleeping." The woman smiled. "He was hungry all this time." and as he ate, he fell asleep immediately. Felsher said that it was clear that you had problems with milk for a long time, so the boy was so restless. Let him fall asleep. Marina did not argue and, nodding, began to pack her things. Deep down, she was glad that Anna Sergeyevna took her son to her neighbors. He was full and under supervision. The girl realized that she needed a little rest, at least for a few hours. She agreed with her cousin, who worked as a manager at a small private hotel, that she would arrange her for a full working day, but for now for a trial period. If Marina is able to cope with her duties well, then in a month she will be officially appointed to the staff. And another good news was that she could live there in the rooms taken for staff. How can I be with Andriusha? Where can I put him while I'm working? There are two options. The first one is that he will live with me for now. But Marina interrupted the woman, remembering the night flash of Uncle Kolya. Yes, listen. Anna Sergeyevna mocked her. I'll deal with Nikolai myself. It's not your problem. Moreover, you can feed the baby with a mixture and porridge now, so you don't need to be present with him all the time. And on the weekend I will bring it to you. But what am I going to do for half a day? I won't be working all day. What else can I do but study and rest? You're totally exhausted, girl. You need to rest. You should calm down. Get yourself in order, study, and do your homework. Alexei called and said that you wanted to sue your husband. Marina nodded, but still doubted the correctness of the decision. You did the right thing. You have to fight for your own. And you'll have a job right now. And it's a big plus for the court. You'll save up money, rent a room, and take Andriusha away. What about the second one? The girl asked. What about the second one? Anna Sergeyevna was upset. You said there are two options. The first one, Andrei, will stay with you for now. And what about the second one? Ah, the second one. Well, if you take it with you and ask someone to look after it for half a day while you're working, you can give it to Jaisal at half a year, but it's still a month and a half before that. Let's do it this way. Marina turned to the woman. I'll look around here for a couple of days, find out what and how, and if it works, I'll take Andriusha. But if there are no options, he will stay with you for now. And when it's possible, I'll hire a nanny or arrange a wedding for him. Okay, we've agreed. Anna Sergeyevna was very close to these two, especially to the baby. Apparently, her unrealized maternal nature gave her a lot to know about herself. She imagined how she would miss her son when Marina would take him, but she hoped that they would come to visit them, and at least sometimes the girl would leave the boy to visit him, the newly baked grandmother and grandfather. And she planned to have a serious conversation with Nikolai. Now it became clear to her that her husband never really wanted her own children, and it was so painful and offensive to her that she lived with a man for more than years whom she, as it turned out, did not know. Now her words were clear to her. We are both fine, right, Anichka? Because people live without children and nothing. She used to think that this way Nikolai comforts her, supports her, and now it became clear that he was only happy and, in fact, never wanted to have a child. The woman shook her head, driving away her obsessive thoughts, and decided that she would think about it later. The conversation with Valentina Viktorovna, the manager of the hotel, went well. Marina was taken for a month trial, and tomorrow she will be able to start working. The maid's job did not require any special skills, but since the hotel was one of the most expensive in the city, the status of the tenants was appropriate. It is necessary to fulfill a number of requirements that correspond to the 4 stars that are hanging on the facade of the building. The first 2 weeks, Marina had to work with her mentor Vera, who would teach her everything that needed to be known and done. Another good news for Marina was that her payout and salary were weekly. And also, the guests who were provided often left tea for the maid. Having taken Anna Sergeyevna to the bus, and having taken a promise to write every hour and send photos of Andrusha, Marina went to get ready for the new place. She was lucky that in a small room, designed for 2 people, she was alone. But she was warned that in the season that would come in a couple of months, she would definitely have a neighbor. Marina was happy to be alone with herself and her thoughts. The girl unpacked her things, took a shower, and lay down to rest. And she didn't notice how she fell asleep. She woke up when the clock showed the beginning of the morning. Having checked her phone and convinced that Anna Sergeyevna had safely reached home and that everything was fine with Andriusha, Marina threw herself on the pillow and smiled broadly. For the first time in the last few months, she was really happy. She rested, slept, she had work and hope for the future. Her child is fed healthy and under supervision, and nothing else bothered her. Marina managed to prepare for her first day of work and even went to have breakfast at our cafe near the hotel. Slowly, she got into her working routine. She met her colleagues, and for her first working week, then for the whole month of working on the farm, Marina's joy was limitless. She thought that if she continued like that, she will be able to rent a small apartment and take Andriusha away. In her free time, in the second half of the day, Marina was studying and preparing for her first session. One day, having breakfast in her now favorite cafe, she heard a conversation about what the waiters needed and decided to clarify the conditions. And in the evening, with a smile on her face, Marina was already standing between the tables and carrying out drinks and snacks. She agreed with the manager that she would leave for a few hours in the evenings, just at the time when the biggest influx of visitors. Thus, Marina had a certain schedule. From morning until 3 in the morning, she would clean up the rooms, then have lunch, rest or read, and from 8 to 11 in the evening, she worked in a cafe. On the weekend, the girl would go to the village of Kanya Sergeyevna to visit her son. Andriusha was surprisingly calm and never had to hold concerts at night. According to Anna Sergeyevna, the boy felt his mother's mood and behaved in a proper way. If Marina was sad and worried, the baby would whine and whine. And if his mother was calm and in a good mood, Andrei didn't cause any trouble. Nikolai seemed to have accepted the situation and resigned, changing his attitude towards Marina and her child. And when the girl brought a bunch of gifts and hotels on her way back, he apologized for his behavior, saying that he had confused him. By the second month of work, Marina was able to give Anna Sergeyevna some money that the woman had lent her for her studies. In general, Marina's life was slowly improving. She gained confidence in herself, in her own strength, and hope for a bright future. The only thing that was darkening her life was that the divorce was getting longer, and Mikhail did not appear at the first court hearing. According to information from Alexey Ivanovich, he left abroad, and when he returned, it was not clear. There was no one at the address where they used to live, and the neighbors said they hadn't seen the owners for a couple of months. This is how Marina concluded that Mikhail, together with his mistress and his mother, simply ran away. It was only one thing that was unclear. Why didn't he divorce her? The first difficulties arose when Marina submitted documents for the son's admission to the kindergarten. The institution had to present the contact information and a copy of the parents' documents and a note of registration of the child. If there were no problems with the first 2 points, then trying to get a note of registration, Marina was pleasantly surprised to learn that their son, without their knowledge, was expelled from the apartment 3 months ago. The girl calculated the dates, and it turned out that it happened a few days after they were put on the street with Andrusha. How was it possible remained a mystery. And now she still has to pay a fine for the fact that she and the child are not registered anywhere. But it was not the worst thing, and the fact that without a registration or at least temporary registration, the boy will not be admitted to the kindergarten. Marina turned to Alexey Ivanovich, hoping that the lawyer will tell her how to get out of the situation and, most importantly, how to get out of it. A few days later, Marina was waiting for another good news. It turns out that the divorce was made without her knowledge, and by law, she is no longer Mikhail's wife. Alexey Ivanovich brought her a copy of the divorce certificate, smiling like a cat who ate sour cream. I don't understand why you are happy. Marina was outraged. We are basically homeless, and now I can't even get him to the kindergarten. This idiot turned everything behind my back and rolled away with his lover into the sunset. Just wonderful. Marina, it's just too much for us. The court will definitely ask how the divorce agreement was received. And since you didn't give it, it means falsification. The lawyer wiped his hands as if he had won the lottery. And the registration is even more interesting. The thing is that you and the child could only be discharged by permission from the caretaker and with the confirmation that the registration for another property will be made immediately. The law is on your side, Marina, because it is prohibited to discharge a minor on the street. So when your ex-husband comes back, he will have to answer for everything before the law. You probably wanted to say if he comes back. What if he moved to the hole? That's even better. The trial will take place anyway. However, we won't be able to conduct an examination, but only if we can't find the biomaterial. How did this surprise the girl? If Mikhail ever was a donor and donated blood, then we can do a DNA test without his actual presence and prove that all the actions he did were illegal. And considering the signature, and I can assume the bribe to the healthcare, it may be a very real term. It is necessary to sue him as soon as possible, and it does not matter when he returns to the country, because as soon as he passes passport control, he will be defeated. Or the trial will be overcome so that the mother does not grieve. I will prepare all the documents. You just need to write a statement and sign your requirements. The rest is up to me. The girl nodded and took a sip of the already cooled tea. They met with Alexey Ivanovich in a cafe, where Marina worked as a waitress. After meeting with the lawyer, she was just about to go on an evening shift. The girl got up from the table and, with the edge of her eyes, she noticed that strange man again, sitting at the corner of the table. For the last few days, she had been constantly seeing him in this place. For the first time, it didn't seem suspicious to Marina, but now, when the man was clearly looking at her with interest, she found it strange. Usually, he was busy with work. Or was he just pretending to be working? Marina thought. The man was sitting, stuck in his laptop, and constantly talking on the phone. The girl didn't know exactly when he was coming, but when she entered the hall, he was definitely already there, in his place in the corner, next to the large panoramic window. It was Marina's favorite place, because of the beautiful view that opened behind the window, the embankment, and the park. At this very place, the girl had breakfast almost every day. Maybe that's why she paid attention to who was sitting there. Usually this man ordered a steak, an apple pie, and a black coffee without sugar. Every day the same thing. And now the girl was sure that this man was stalking her. Marina shook her head, driving away the dark thoughts, and, slightly leaning towards Alexey Ivanovich, she whispered, "Play me." "What?" "Sorry, I didn't understand the man." But Marina already coquettishly waved at him and, grabbing the lawyer by the hand, with a blind smile, dragged him to the exit. Alexey Ivanovich's eyes flew to his forehead. He did not understand the obvious flirt of the girl, was embarrassed and very surprised. When they turned the building around, in which the cafe was located, Marina hurried to explain her behavior. "Marina, are you sure that everything is right?" "Maybe," agreed the girl, looking out of the corner. "Or maybe not." At least Marina was very hopeful that the lawyer was right. But the look at that man more confirmed her guesses. This mysterious gentleman was clearly dissatisfied with the fact that Marina left the cafe with a man, and his frowning look and a droopy brow spoke of the obvious interest in the couple on the move. "Thank you, Ivan Alexeyevich, for not disclosing my name and for not apologizing for my familiarity. Don't take it to your head." The man waved his hand, and then, mingling, added, "It's nice to be part of such an adventure for the old wolf." The man smiled widely. "Thank you, but something is wrong here," the girl said. "Okay, I'll watch him. Maybe it's just my nerves. See you then." "See you tomorrow, my dear." "I'll be here at the same time tomorrow. and we'll start the process. And I have no doubt that it will be a successful outcome. God bless you. God bless you. Marina nodded and, saying goodbye to Alexey Ivanovich, hurried to the spare entrance to the cafe located inside the yard. Today Marina asked to be at the delivery room and help in the kitchen with the dishes. She did not want to go out to the hall, even though she knew that working there will earn much more. The girl was watching the mysterious stranger because of the open doors leading to the office. The man was looking at the clock and running through the hall, and as it seemed to Marina, he was looking at the waiters who were sleeping in the hall. Tanya, one of the workers in the hall, even complained to the strange uncle sitting in the corner. The girl said that he had already ordered a fourth cup of coffee, and he wasn't going to leave. The girl said that he was going to leave in an hour, and the check was good if it was 1,000 for two. Usually he leaves good tea. The colleague Marina tried to calm down. But if so, let him sit. The girl smiled and, having grabbed the plate from the counter, went to deliver food. The next day Marina found a man in the same place. She could swear that when she entered the cafe and looked at her favorite corner, a smile appeared on the face of the stranger, which disappeared in a moment, and he focused on studying the papers lying on the table in front of him. Marina found a free seat away from the window and, covering the menu, watched the man until the lawyer came. Alexey Ivanovich gave a big kiss to the girl's hand, smiling and slightly nodding in the direction of the stranger. Marina bit her lips, trying to hide a smile from the fact that she dragged an innocent person into this game. Maybe it's true that this man just lives nearby, and just like Marina, he comes here every day to eat, and the crazy thoughts of the persecutor are only her fantasies. No matter how it is, she had more important things to do now. And Marina decided to sort it out with a mysterious stranger later. Having discussed all the details and made a statement, Marina and Alexey said goodbye. There was no going back now. The girl was terribly angry at the former man who left her on the street with the child in a clearly illegal way. And now her mood was decisive. She wanted to prove her innocence and return the money at all costs. Within a week, the mysterious man was still on schedule. Marina caught herself thinking that at the moments when she didn't see him, she was wondering where he was going. And when the stranger took his place by the window, the girl felt a strange mixture of emotions, the joy that he had come, and the anxiety about her thoughts about the persecution. She spent the whole week in the kitchen, only occasionally going out to the hall to replace her colleague on a break. And every time Marina felt the close look of an acquaintance, from whom goosebumps ran down her back. A couple more days later, Marina's patience burst, and she decided that she would not hide anymore. "You follow me?" asked the girl with a call, coming up to the stranger and lowering the elementary rules of decency. The man clearly did not expect such a turn and suddenly spilled his coffee. "What? I'm sorry." Looking at the girl from head to toe, he smiled and looked at the badge with the name, which was attached to the girl's chest. "Marina, right?" I mean, sorry." The girl was crouched under the soft gaze of the man, and her sometimes fighting mood flew away somewhere. She was clearly embarrassed by her attack on the man. But the word, as they say, is not a crow. And she also remembered, by the way, that she was at work, and in front of her was a visitor to the restaurant, who has the full right to complain to her boss for inappropriate behavior. "Why did you decide that I was watching you?" The man asked with a smile and added a little quieter, Marina?" After the stranger said her name, the girl's face flashed, and looking into his eyes, she straightened out, held her hand around her apron, and, pulling her chin up, tried to preserve the remains of her self-control and fix the situation. "Apparently, I was in a hurry to draw conclusions. I'm sorry." She nodded, and turning around, was about to hide. "Marina," her stranger called out. The girl froze in place, scolding herself for her suspicions, which made her come to the visitors. Then she took a deep breath and turned to the man. "I'm listening to you." She smiled as softly as possible, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. For a few seconds, the man looked into the girl's eyes, as if thinking something, and then, smiling, said, the stranger did not break the eye contact with Marina. Please. From the intensity of his gaze, the girl felt her heart start to beat faster, and suddenly the fluttering excitement gave way in her hands. Shaking her head and lowering her gaze to her feet, she nodded, yes, of course, and hurried to run to the kitchen. What was it? She whispered to herself. She leaned against the wall of the kitchen area and put her hand on her chest. She tried to cope with the excitement that was pouring down on her. Having made a deep breath, Marina waved her hand over her hair and went to make coffee. Somehow, having coped with her emotions, the girl put the cup on the tray and returned to the hall. With shaking hands, which clearly did not hide from the stranger, she put the cup on the table. Here you go. Marina glanced at the man. I'm sorry again. Thank you. The man smiled. It's all right. Don't worry. He nodded and turned his gaze to the paper lying on the table. Marina hoped that the incident had been scrapped and that this mysterious stranger would not complain to her management. But the girl did not give up on the thought that everything was not as simple as it seemed, and the strange glances that the man was throwing at her while she was walking around the hall, there was something else. Over time, Marina calmed down, tried to concentrate on her work and throw thoughts about the man out of her head. Since the day she came to meet strangers, they have not interacted anymore, not counting the light nods and smiles as a greeting. His table was served by other waiters, which made the girl very happy. And when her probation period was over in the hotel and she was officially hired, she decided to leave the cafe and focus on her studies and her main job. Having made a temporary registration for the money, Marina prepared all the documents for the child's enrollment in the kindergarten. But on the third day of the visit to the orphanage, the boy got sick, and Marina had to take the hospital for a week to take care of the baby. She was allowed to stay in the living room of the hotel, but her boss didn't like it very much. The woman tactically hinted that if the child would often get sick, she would have to look for another job and a place to live. Marina's condition was darkened by the fact that even at the second court meeting, her ex-husband also did not appear, which in general was expected. The girl told all the details of her misconduct, but could not present any evidence. And although the judge listened to her carefully, even as it seemed, Marina was sincerely interested in her case. But without the second party, her ex-husband, who participated in this case, could not make an objective decision. They couldn't have conducted the DNA test without Mikhail. In the end, they just had to wait, and no one knew how long. There was good news. The previous test results for the fatherhood were not attached to the case materials, as the test was conducted without Marina's consent, and therefore was not a confirmation of the accusation by the former husband, and was considered invalid. I rely on facts and evidence, and they are not in your favor, Marina. After the meeting, folding the documents into the folder, the judge said to the girl, but as a man, I advise you to fight, and let this scoundrel pay for everything before the law. The man nodded in the sign of forgiveness and left the hall, and Marina came to her senses for a few more minutes after his words, which instilled hope and faith in the girl, which, as she thought, had already finally slipped away from her. And Marina fought as best she could. She wrote a police report, and Mikhail was declared on the wanted list for the administrative case of causing moral harm. This also added a preliminary charge of bribery and fake signatures. The girl took control of herself and determined the main goals for the near future. During the day, she worked hard to distract herself from thoughts. She spent the evenings with her son, and after he fell asleep, she devoted time to her studies. When Andriusha got sick for the first time, Anna Sergeyevna took the baby to her, so that the girl wouldn't lose her job. Marina was very worried about this, but she understood that this decision was necessary. Marina, in the room that the girl was just about to clean up, looked at Lisa, a colleague at work. Marina was surprised. I don't know, some man? Lisa shook her shoulders. Nice. She giggled. I took him to the service exit. He is waiting for you there. Marina was grumpy and getting ready to go to the wall when to pick up the girl. She had no idea who could be interested in her, especially a man. What was her surprise when she came to the door, she saw her husband through the glass. Or rather, the ex-husband Mikhail. The first thing she wanted was to turn around and run away. She was so scared. But then she thought and decided that this was how the old Marina would have done it, and not the one she was now. She was strong, ready to face her fear and fight for her life. The girl took a deep breath, waved her hair, and opened the door. Mikhail turned around to hear this sound, and threw the former wife with a cold look. Why did he come? She looked him in the eye, although she was scared and angry at this man, and her legs were twitching. What have you thought, you scum? In his eyes, a bad light flashed, and he took a step towards Marina. Don't you dare come near me, the girl whispered, looking back and throwing her hand. Otherwise, new ones will be added to those accusations that already exist. I see you've become brave. Who's helping you? Did you find another fool who's been fooled like me? It's not your business. And you're a fool who's been fooled. You'll see very soon. But I didn't fool you, Misha. And Svetka was with your mom, who hated me from the first day. Don't be silly. Mom told me how you behaved while I was abroad. Really? And how? Marina asked, and put her hand in her mouth on her ex-husband's face. How she was rolling, not sure where and with whom. How she was drinking alcohol while pregnant. How? Stop. The girl put her hand up, stopping this meaningless stream of false information. I don't want to hear anything like that in my address anymore. Did you come to insult me again? How did you find out where I work? I have connections. Mikhail was shocked. And I came because my entire mailbox was filled with statements to the court. What do you want to achieve? Do you really expect to get at least a penny from me? Yes, I do. Marina collected the remains of her courage, stepped to him, and squeezed her hands into his fists. I expect to return the money that I gave you after selling my grandmother's apartment. And I expect that if you don't believe me, at least you will believe the court. And you'll see that I never lied to you. What a snake you are. The child was walking, and now? Shut your mouth. Marina was angry, and she barely held back not to get angry at her ex-husband. You've warmed up the real snakes in your chest. And if you have nothing else to say, I'm sorry, I need to work. Unlike you, I'll never be able to get the child out of my life. Oh, don't push it now. Let's do another test, and everything will be clear. Let's see how you sing then. Let's see, Marina smiled. She didn't hide the doubts that flashed in Mikhail's eyes. He was no longer as confident in his right as before. It was obvious, and it only made the girl feel bad. And it will be interesting to find out how you managed to file a divorce without my consent, and to fire us from the apartment we bought together. You won't prove anything, and you can't even imagine who you're dealing with. The ex-husband was walking through the teeth, and when he stepped closer, he grabbed Marina by the shoulder, so the girl screamed, I'll smear you like a bug. You'll crawl on my knees and beg. Pray that your puppy doesn't turn out to be my son. Otherwise you can say goodbye to him forever. You won't dare to do this, Marina whispered, holding back tears from her last strength. I'll try to do it. Michael slightly loosened his grip, but didn't lift his arms off his shoulders. I want to do a test before the meeting to understand what he's preparing for. Damn it. Marina threw his hands off and stepped back. Now we're going to do everything through court. Okay. I will destroy you. You cannot doubt that. See you in court. The man spat out and quickly turned away. Marina went into the building and slowly crawled down the wall, giving will to tears and releasing her most terrible fear. She was afraid that Michael would take Andriushka from her. The girl trembled, feeling the touch to her hand, and raised her head. Lisa looked at her with regret in her eyes. I saw everything. Lisa also went down on the bed. Is this your ex? Marina just nodded, wiping her tears. What happened? Lisa tried to support the girl, but Marina did not want to put her difficulties on other people and hurried to get up. She rolled her eyes and smirked. She shook her head. We will now solve the issues through court, otherwise, apparently, it will not work. If you need help, I can be a witness. Lisa looked at Marina with interest. I saw how he was holding you and heard how he was screaming and threatening. Thank you, Liz. Marina squeezed the girl's hand. If you need it, I'll tell you. Suddenly, Lisa hugged Marina and whispered, Never give up. You are not alone. Thank you. Marina whispered in response, and once again was amazed by the kindness and responsiveness of people who surrounded her. She really wasn't alone. I'll go to work, or the cleaning lady won't do it herself. Marina, fed up with fear, grabbed the cart and, opening the first door to the hotel room with a plastic key, pushed her inside, trying to hide from the whole world. With anger, she began to tear the bed down and in rage whisper angry words to her ex-husband. Having immersed in her thoughts, the girl didn't even notice how the bathroom door opened, and a waitress came out of it. Marina rather felt him than heard. Being behind the owner of the room, she quickly crawled out of bed with a bunch of clothes on and straightened out, carefully thinking about how she would explain her presence in the room. Having held her breath, the girl began to slowly turn around to apologize for the intrusion. You? She sighed. Marina's eyes widened, and her hand fluttered towards her mouth. The bed that fell out of her hands, with a soft rustle, fell to the floor, and the girl only grabbed the air with her mouth. You're following me? The stranger returned the phrase that Marina had attacked him with a few weeks ago. The man was standing, with a smile was playing on her lips, and her left eyebrow was laughingly pulled up. Although Marina was offended by the absurd assumption of an unfamiliar, she was very embarrassed by this look and blushed. What? Who? How could you? She got lost and, until it was too late, she hurried away. Wait, it's so easy today. You won't escape. The stranger grabbed her hands, surprised by his rush. But when the girl shuddered and hissed at the pain, pulling her head into her shoulders, he abruptly put his hands away and lifted them, as if giving up. He was sure that his touch was soft and could not cause the pain that was pouring into the girl's eyes. Only now the man paid attention to her swollen red eyes, in which tears were gathering. And why do all men think that it is so easy to grab a woman without her consent and demand something from her? Marina squeezed her hands into her fists, which the stranger, walking, leaned back. From Marina's eyes, large tears of anger and resentment were already splashing. She took a step towards the man. Why do people like you think that everything is allowed to them? Why do you think that you rule this world and you have no control over you? What the hell are you talking about? The stranger was in a daze, completely clueless of Marina. But when his gaze fell on the shoulders of the girl, where the bruises were coming from under the shirt, in the shape of the fingers that were mentioned, he was even more in a daze, knowing for sure that he couldn't grab her so hard until the bruises. And then he finally got to him. The state of the girl, the tears, the pointless accusations of the bruises. Someone attacked Marina, and whoever he was, he would pay for it. Who did it? A man looked into Marina's eyes and said, Who is this bastard that caused you pain? Does he live here, in the hotel? Where? In which room? Marina, tell me immediately who attacked you. No, you didn't understand everything, the girl, coming to her senses, said. Forgive me. She seemed to have come out of the clutches and hurried to fix the situation. This is completely wrong. Marina wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Forgive me for yelling at you. You are not to blame for this. Marina, let's do this. You sit on the sofa over there. The man pointed towards the window, where there was a stylish sofa, and barely touching her back, softly pushed the girl to that place. And I'll brew us some tea. We'll just sit down, drink it, and if you want, tell us what happened, and if not, then just calm down and then continue your work. Marina wanted to object, but the man stopped her again. I promised to keep my hands to myself. He lifted them again and smiled barely. In this state, excuse me, you are not very good workers, but if you don't want to, I won't insist. The man took a step back, giving her a choice, to leave or stay. Okay. The girl slightly nodded, looking at the sofa, but returning her gaze to the stranger, she blushed again. Only, could you please? She looked anywhere, but not at him. Oh, excuse me. The man remembered that he was still standing in front of the girl in one towel. Yes, of course. Give me a minute. He hid in the room, and in a minute he appeared in jeans and a gray t-shirt. Marina was not used to seeing strangers in such everyday clothes, because she was used to the fact that he was always in business suits or shirts in the cafe. By the way, she thought about the fact that she had just seen him almost naked, and no matter how much she wanted, she could not but admit the courage of this stranger. Today he was inspiring trust, and for some reason it seemed to Marina that being with him, she was safe. The girl shook her head again and gave herself a thought under the back of her head. Mikhail also spoke beautifully and instilled trust, but in fact he turned out to be a scoundrel. From the memories, Marina was sick of it, and tears began to gather in her eyes again. The sound of the cup put by an unfamiliar person on the table in front of the sofa made Marina tremble and look at him. The man again got teary, seeing the girl's eyes full of tears. My name is Alexander, by the way. He smiled weakly and stretched Marina's hand. Marina. The girl squeezed her weakly and let go as quickly as possible. But you already know this. For some time they sat in complete silence. Alexander didn't dare to break this silence, surprisingly comfortable for both of them, but was already thinking about starting to say at least something to get the girl out of this strange state, in which, as it seemed to him, she fell as soon as she took the first sip of tea. But when Marina, looking out the window and getting lost in her thoughts, took a deep breath and began to speak, the man was out of breath. I thought that she was left alone in this huge world. But when he appeared, it seemed like she was broken. She talked and talked. She told her whole story from the very beginning, without hiding anything. She told about people who helped her, how she ended up here, and what nightmare her life turned into. Sometimes going into details, sometimes for a short while, and allowing her eyes to drip with silent tears. She didn't understand why she was throwing all this at an unfamiliar man, but as never before, Astra felt her need to speak up and was grateful to Alexander, who never interrupted her. She looked at him just a couple of times to make sure that the man was still here and didn't run away from her story. I will destroy you, he said to me today, and I believe that he can really do it. The girl sighed and raised her red tears. In the midst of an incomprehensible rush, Alexander got up from the chair opposite the table and, approaching the sofa on which Marina was sitting, stretched her arm. Can I? The man softly said. Marina nodded and put her cold palm into his strong hand. Slightly pulling on herself, Alexander lifted Marina and looked into her eyes, in which confusion flashed. Don't be afraid. The man whispered and pulled the girl into a tight embrace. Marina was tense, but in a few seconds she exhaled and relaxed in his arms, hugging him in return. Then she carefully put her head on the man's chest and cried again. These were tears of liberation, tears of relief from fears, anxiety, and doubts that tore her apart. And this support from strangers was now for Marina like a breath of fresh air, an energy charge that will allow her not to let go and not to stop halfway. I was so tired of fighting, muttering about her, fighting against these unbreakable walls of disbelief. I have no more strength, and I'm afraid he'll take my son away from me. Alexander really wanted to calm Marina down, to say that everything will be fine, but he couldn't promise it. At least not now. For now. That's why he was just calming her down, allowing her to let out all the emotions that he became a free witness to. He didn't understand his feelings for this girl, but for some reason he wanted to help her, to protect and remove this deep sadness from her beautiful eyes. When he saw Marina for the first time, she sat by the window and looked into the distance, smiling sadly for some reason. He immediately liked the girl very much. A well-built figure, long hair, braided in a tight braid, expressive features of the face, high cheekbones, neat nose, and plump pink lips. In general, a real beauty. The immediacy and naivety of her gaze lit a strange fire in Alexander's soul, which he had never felt before. The man wanted to look into these eyes again and again, and involuntarily became interested in their sincerity and purity. After several days of watching Marina, he was very successful in not being caught by the eyes. He came to the cafe only because he wanted to see her again and admire her beauty. And he was pleasantly surprised when he saw the girl with the man, who looked twice as old as her. From their conversation, it was clear that they were not lovers, but not a father and daughter. Rather, old acquaintances or colleagues at work. At some point, his strategy of observation failed, and he was literally beaten up. The girl threw lightnings at him with her eyes and blamed the surveillance, which, in general, was not so far from the truth. Alexander was amazed by the intensity with which Marina tried to defend her interests and bring him to clean water. He admired her reddened cheeks, on which barely noticeable pits were visible, her deep voice, with which she was loudly outraged. It was on that day that her eyes finally captured him. Yes, the man for the first time in his life did not find anything to say to the woman. So he was amazed by the feelings and emotions that this beautiful girl had in him. At that time, he noticed this universal sadness in her eyes, mixed with the wisdom of an elderly person who had seen life, and also suspicion and distrust. Usually, girls of her age built eyes, flirted and smiled coquettishly, especially to him. Alexander, beautiful, tall, a young man in his early years, with dark wavy hair and a light bristle on his cheekbones and chin. And Marina looked tired and sad, and this alerted him, and he did not take any action to get to know her better. He just wanted to watch her and, if it was convenient, invite her on a date. And what was his disappointment when, without seeing Marina for several days and not being able to stand it, he was interested in the waitress and her colleague. And he was even more disappointed when he found out that she had quit. Alexander was angry that he didn't ask for her phone number. And when he had lost all hope of meeting this beautiful girl, she came to him. Literally. To say that he was surprised is not to say anything. He was just shocked. Mostly because all this time while he was trying to find out about Marina and find her, she was right under his nose. And the fact that she worked as a maid was a little annoying to Alexander. And not because he thought this job was low class. No. And all because if he plans to develop relations with Marina, and this is what he planned, sooner or later he will have to tell who he is. And for some reason the man was sure that the girl would not like it. But he decided to think about it later, and now continued to console the one who was slowly calming down and only rare whispers they talked about in the recent emotional explosion. In the morning, Marina was met by the treacherous bright light of the sun that penetrated through the unclogged window. She smoothly stretched out and smiled at how warm and cozy she was in a soft bed. Enjoy the rays of the dawn sun. The girl suddenly opened her eyes, recalling that the window in her small room in the basement is not so big, and such bright light cannot get through it. And her bed is definitely not as comfortable as this one. Marina looked around and realized that she was still in Alexandra's room, or rather in his bed. She looked under the blanket, checking if the clothes were there, and trying to remember what happened and how she could fall asleep in the room without meeting. "Oh my God," Marina said, closing her face with her hands. "What a fool I am," thought the girl. She broke into the room to the attendant, made a hysteria with tears, as if it were a world flood, and even dredged in his bed. God, what did he think of me? The hotel administration must have complained already. She scolded herself, remembering that she had not finished her work and that she should have been fired. Marina began to get out of bed and shivered when she heard the click of the door and soft steps on the carpet. Having jumped on her feet, she fixed her skirt and ironed her hair. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty." Alexander entered the room with a nose on his hands, on which the coffee was smoking, and on a flat plate there was appetizing food. "Good," Marina muttered, breaking her hands and lowering her eyes to the floor. "I apologize for yesterday." The man put the tray on the table and, coming up to the girl, gently raised her head over her chin. "No need for apologies, Marina. I am not angry and was not against listening to the story. Thank you for trusting me." And the girl didn't slip away from the fact that the man had switched to you. "Thank you." She said the last word to not cross the line with the hotel guest. Yes, Marina thought about herself. Not very appropriate, considering what you cried yesterday on his chest. "I think it's time. Thank you for listening and for sheltering." She smiled nervously. "And really, Alexander, thank you very much. I'm very embarrassed that I fell asleep. I'm sorry." "Okay, Marina, I'm sorry for the intrusion, but on one condition." The girl threw her head down and her eyes were rounded. "Don't worry, it's nothing inappropriate." He winked at her and sat down at the table. "Have breakfast with me, and let's move on to you, otherwise it's awkward to tell her God." "Okay, thank you." And, having filled her ears with hair, she sat down on the couch opposite Alexander. They had breakfast in a cozy silence, each thinking about their own. "Can I ask a question?" Alexander looked at Marina carefully. Yes, of course, ask." Ask." She smiled shyly. "Let me help you." "What do you mean?" Marina didn't understand. "I mean, protecting her ex-husband. I have acquaintances and lawyers, and if everything is exactly as you told me, they should not prove his guilt and run for the bars." "I have a lawyer." "And why do you need—" "Oh, I'm sorry, you." The girl was sincerely surprised that an unfamiliar man was trying to help her, or pretending that she was trying. She could not trust him yet. And it's all strange. They only met yesterday, and now they are ready to help. "Because I can." Alexander shook his shoulders. "And I want this." "But why didn't she take it?" "What if I say that I like you?" His look was very serious, and Marina, to her shame, believed him or just wanted to believe at least someone. "And if I like a girl, I think it's my duty to help her." "You, that is, you? All the girls you like help you." Marina pulled out her eyebrows and straightened her back, jealous that she could like such a beautiful man, but could not believe in his nobility. "No, not everyone." Alexander's view was still serious. "Honestly, this is the first time for me." Marina was jittery under his prudish gaze. "What do you want in return?" she quietly asked, amazed by her courage and the fact that she could even allow the thought of a man trusting her again. "Nothing." He shook his shoulders. "Nothing of the sort that you yourself will not want to give me on your own will." Marina almost shrugged her shoulders, trying to consider the sincerity in the eyes of Alexander, but she was not there. The man's eyes lit up and she smiled and added, "I'll think." After that conversation, they did not see each other for several days. Marina came to the doors of Alexandra's room several times, but she did not dare to knock and make her decision. The girl plunged into work, whining and preparing for court hearings, which she was warned by Alexey Ivanovich. Mikhail behaved carelessly, sometimes provoking, but at the same time he was collected and confident in himself. He answered all questions of the judge clearly and confidently. It seemed that he had been preparing for a long time and was convinced that he would definitely win the case. His lawyer was like a predator, confident that the prey was caught. Each of his questions was thought out in several steps forward, and the answers he received caused a satisfactory nod, as if they were thought out. At some point, Marina got confused and cried, and the mother of her ex-husband and his lover Svetka immediately threw herself at her. They, like snakes, tried to break the self-control of the girl with every single word or remark, and to shatter her faith in herself and the truth that she knew. By the end of the meeting, Marina was no longer sure that there was truth and that there was not. According to Mikhail and his witnesses, she spent her pregnancy as a walk-in lifestyle. She drank, smoked, and spent the nights in the dark. She stole money from her in-laws for her entertainment, and she allegedly signed the divorce papers on the day when she left Mikhail's house and his mother's. Her words that all this is a slander and untruth, without facts and evidence, had no weight yet. I said everything. If you believe these crooks, I have no reason to justify myself, said Marina, and until the end of the hearing she said nothing more. The only thing Mikhail admitted was that he had bribed the care workers to get permission to fire Marina and her son from the apartment. He motivated this by being killed by grief because of his wife's betrayal, but he was ready to bear the punishment for this and pay the fine. All the evidence and evidence found were put together for the case material, and the final hearing will decide on each point of this confusing case. Marina, Andriushka, and Mikhail took blood for analysis right after the meeting in the court building. The next 2 weeks, she didn't find a place for herself, and despite the fact that Alexei Ivanovich was calming the girl down and convinced them that they had won the trial in their pocket, she was very worried all the time. Marina got the courage and turned to Alexandra, who seemed to be waiting for this. A couple of days later, Alexei Ivanovich and Yuri Petrovich, Alexander's lawyer, were already working out a defense strategy in case Mikhail tries to take the child after he finds out that Andrei is his son. They also searched for witnesses and evidence that Mikhail had taken Marina's money and made her signature. On the day of trial, Marina was like a needle in a needle, and no assurances from her lawyers and her friends helped. Anna Sergeyevna and her husband and colleagues from work came to support the girl on the day of trial. Alexei Ivanovich and Yuri Petrovich smiled slyly and talked about some kind of surprise. Who will not leave this scoundrel a chance? Only Alexander was silent and serious. Don't be afraid. We're here for you. He carefully took the girl by the hand and squeezed her a little bit to support her. Alexei Ivanovich and Yura did a good job. They know what they're doing. Trust them. And even if things don't go as we planned, it's too early to despair. We'll fight to the end. Alexander took a deep breath and looked into the girl's eyes, gave her a promise, although he was not sure that he would be able to fulfill it. I promise that he will not take your son away from you. Thank you very much, Sasha. Also, looking into her eyes, the girl whispered, I really appreciate your help and support, and I promise that I will not give up, no matter what. Unexpectedly, for herself, Marina got up on the chain and left a light kiss on the cheek of Alexander. She whispered once again, thank you. The girl looked at the man and, trying to hide her embarrassed smile, went to the room to see the lawyer. Alexander did not take his eyes off the woman's figure and did not notice how a wide smile stretched on his face, and the tips of his fingers slightly touched the cheek, which Marina had just kissed. The meeting went like in a fog, and as it seemed to Marina, very quickly. But the most memorable were 2 moments. The first was when they announced the DNA test result, and Mikhail, who was not able to stand on his feet and fell on his chair, grabbed his head, swinging it from side to side, as if denying or not believing what was happening. And the second is the testimony of a secret witness, whose name was not announced until his invitation to the hall. Alexei Ivanovich and Yuri Petrovich. They didn't hide their joy and knew that they had it in their pockets. What was the surprise of Marina, and not only her, when Marta, the girl who cleaned the house in Svikrov, gave her testimony and confirmed the truthfulness of Marina's words and Nina Petrovna's lies to Mikhail's mother. The woman threw lightnings and threatened the girl right in the courtroom, for which she was taken out of the hall for breaking the discipline. Mikhail was blacker than the clouds. He looked at Svetlana with an angry look and threw his eyes full of regret at Marina. This sly lady was given an impressive fine for knowingly falsely accused of slander and causing moral harm. Taking into account the new testimony, Mikhail's guilt was proven in all articles. The man did not deny anything, and the pale lawyer. As a result, Mikhail was put under surveillance until the sentence was issued, and all the complaints made by Marina were satisfied. "Marina, forgive me," Mikhail shouted when he was taken out of the hall. "It was all them. These meggers have built everything up. I didn't know anything. I swear. If only I knew that it was all a lie. Forgive me. Let's start all over again. We'll leave. Only you, me and our son. Forgive me." Marina was swallowing tears and couldn't look into the eyes of her ex-husband. Despite the fact that he confessed and repented, his girlfriend couldn't forgive him. "What did I tell you, Marina?" Alexey Ivanovich smiled, hugging the girl and patting her on the back. "You did well. You didn't back down and went all the way. Good always wins. Thank you all for your help." The girl looked around and raised a glass of red wine. "Now I really know that there is not one in this world, and if I want to, I can cope with anything." The hall was filled with loud applause, and everyone raised their glasses. Together they gathered in a restaurant near the hotel where Marina worked to celebrate their success. Marina, without stopping, thanked everyone for their help and support, not yet fully realizing what had happened. Having invited all guests, as well as Anna Sergeyevna and Nikolai, Marina once again thanked Alexey Ivanovich and Yuri Petrovich for their flawless work and their coordinated tandem, which helped to win the case. She also looked at Alexandra, who, without breaking away, looked at the girl and, it seemed, caught every word she said. They needed to talk, and Marina did not find a reason to start this conversation, although she definitely did not know what exactly she wanted to tell him. She could not express in words all the gratitude that the man felt for this, but she did not want to rush the event. Alexander really liked her, and as she already knew, this feeling was mutual. But the girl was afraid to make a mistake again, trusting the man. Now she was not alone and could not make a decision without taking into account this fact. What was she thinking about? She was shocked. Alexander sat next to Marina at the table by the window. Now it was their table. About life, about the future, about you. The girl smiled shyly and bit her lip. "It's good." And what did she think? "Is there a place for me in your future life?" Alexander copied her smile, slightly leaning and looking into the girl's eyes. "Sasha," she sighed and decided to just be honest with him. "I have no words to express my gratitude to you." But the man was grumpy, waiting for a sequel, which, as it seemed to him, he definitely would not like. "No buts. I like you, but I don't want to hurry. I don't have time for personal life right now, and after what happened, I'm not ready for it yet. All I want now is to finish school, rent a normal flat, and raise my son. If you're ready to be around me as a friend, I'll be happy. But if you want something bigger," until she specifically said that, "I'm not ready to give it to you, if you know what I mean." "I understand, Marina." Alexander smiled and covered his girl's hand with his palm. "Thank you for your honesty. I won't ask for more." He shook her hand, letting her know that he was ready to give her as much time as needed. "This time I want to be sure that I trust my life and the life of my child to the real man." Marina tried to convey all her doubts and worries with her gaze. "I'm afraid that I won't survive if something like this happens to me again." She covered their hands with her second palm and squeezed a little. "And I'm definitely not the option that you should consider if you just want to have fun. No, Marina, my intentions are as serious as ever." The man sighed. He did not give her empty promises and oaths of eternal love, but he did not intend to retreat either. Alexander took the girl to the hotel, and leaving a light kiss on her cheek, he said goodbye and went to his room. He was glad that Marina did not ask him about himself and his activities, but he knew that he would soon need to tell everything, especially since his business trip was coming to an end, and in a few days he would have to return to the capital. Deep down, he hoped that Marina would accept his offer and go with him. But after their conversation, he did not touch on this topic, realizing that the girl was not ready for this conversation yet. The next few days, Alexander did everything to prove to Marina the seriousness of his intentions. And the more they communicated, the more his confidence in the fact that he wanted to connect his life with this beautiful girl. He liked talking to her on different topics. They found more and more common interests and habits. Marina was educated, smart, and well-read. She had natural modesty and charm. But at the same time, she had inner strength and willpower, and also a thirst for life, her own development, and a desire to achieve her goals on her own. And this was no comparison to those girls that Alexander had met before. He was amazed and understood that he fell in love with Marina, and was very afraid that she would not respond to him in return. But he decided that he would do everything to gain her trust and become her and her son's support and support. The closer his departure day came, the more he was nervous. But he did not dare to start a conversation about this. Together they took Andriushka from Anna Sergeyevna and brought him to the city. And they brought him to the city, which Marina was considering for the first time. Alexander decided that there was no point in pulling the strings anymore, and he just had to tell Marina everything he thought and how he saw their future life. And it will depend on her decision on how he will act next. Alexander invited Marina to a picnic outside the city, where they planned to enjoy the nature and talk. The girl gladly accepted the invitation, but only on the condition that her son would go with them. Alexander was not against getting to know the boy and showing his mother how they actually became important to him for this short time. But their plan was not destined to be fulfilled. When they were already going to the kindergarten to pick up Andriusha and then to go to the picnic, a call was given. "Hello, I'm listening." The girl replied with a wide smile at the man's next joke. But this beautiful smile crawled from her face, which in a second became pale, and horror and despair flashed in her eyes. How did it disappear? How do you not know how it happened? Are you crazy? It's a child. Marina went to scream, and tears flowed from her eyes. The phone fell out of her hands, and she closed her face loudly with her hands. What happened? Alexander asked with a whisper, knowing that something terrible had happened. Andriusha was kidnapped. Marina was shocked, and the car's interior was shaken by loud cries. Without saying a word, Alexander pressed the pedal and clung to the wheel so that the bones turned white. Squeaking his teeth, he turned to the girl and put his hand on her shoulder. "We will find him, Marina. We will definitely return him. I promise you." "Please," she whispered. "Please, Sasha, return my son." It was not a request. It was a prayer to the desperate mother who stole the child. And Alexander knew that he would break into the cake, but wipe this pain out of her eyes and will never allow Marina to experience something like this. "Yura." He dialed the number and put the phone to his ear. "Raise everyone you know. The boy was kidnapped. The sooner we find out who did it, the faster we will understand what they want." "It's him. It's him. It's him," said Marina half an hour later, sitting on a bench near the kindergarten, swinging from side to side. She pulled her knees to her chin and cried nonstop. The police arrived, and they conducted an interrogation of witnesses, but no one saw anything. How could a child disappear from a closed area in broad daylight? It remained a mystery for everyone. Through the veil of tears, Marina saw a male figure quickly approaching her. She jumped on her feet and, not even having time to figure out what she was doing, flew up to the man. Where is my son? She pushed Mikhail into her chest with all her might, so he stepped back. Where are you doing him, you scum? He followed another blow. Do you not feel the pain you caused us? Marina, I'm not. I just found out about it. I was called from the police and I came right away. I would never. You would never do that. Or did you forget how you kicked us out? I didn't know then. It's all Sveta. Marina, I swear. I'll fix everything. We'll find Andriusha and... He didn't have time to finish, because his male voice tore him in half. Thank you. We can do it without you, Alexander said coldly. He closed his back on Marina and snuck into her ex-husband's angry gaze. You had a chance, and you missed it. It's too late to fix something now. He turned to the girl and softly said, Come on, darling. They want to talk to you. Darling, who are you? And why are you sticking to my wife? She's not your wife anymore. If you forgot. Oh, I see. So, my mother was right and you, Shala? A loud slap in the face did not let Michael finish. He fell to the ground spitting blood and spilling Alexander with curses. You will regret this, you freak. I will judge you. I wish you good luck. Alexander brushed his teeth and, hugging Marina, led her to the police officers. After a while, Nina Petrovna arrived and, quickly talking to her son, went to a group of people in uniform. She said she knew where the boy could be and who could possibly take him. The woman said that Svetlana, her son's colleague, and his lover came to her yesterday, and she found out what Mikhail was planning to do. She said that she had a plan that she wanted to discuss with him, and if they do everything as she says, everyone will be happy. But Mikhail's mother, who already understood what a terrible mistake she made when she went to Svetlana's house, she drove the woman away and asked to leave them with their son in peace and not to interfere in their lives. The next hours were like a fog for Marina. She couldn't think about anything, to eat, to sleep, and even her tears didn't remain. Alexander was constantly in touch with investigators and lawyers, but the search results did not give anything yet. He also brought a private detective from Moscow, but there was no news from him yet. The main suspect was Svetlana. The woman did not come into contact on the second day, and her location was still not established. Since they had the motive, this version was also worked out, and investigators worked with them. All the recordings from the surveillance cameras were taken from the kindergarten building, and all possible witnesses were interrogated. Alexander, as he could, was calming the girl down, but he was afraid that anything could happen to the boy during this time. And the more time passed, the more the ghosts hoped that everything would be fine and they would find him alive and healthy. Marina was crying on Alexander's chest, allowing herself to hug him. Only in the embrace of this man, she could keep her mind and not go crazy from the thoughts and feelings that tore her to pieces. They were in his room by the time the second day had passed, since her son had disappeared. The phone call was ringing in the middle of the night, like thunder in the clear sky. Marina and Alexander jumped on the bed. Where? It was the only thing the man said. After a couple of minutes, he silently listened to the interlocutor at the other end of the wire. I see. We're leaving. We'll be there in the morning. He hung up the phone and looked at Marina. We found her. Andriusha is fine. A light smile touched the man's face and he sighed. She was detained at the Sheremetyevo airport on a flight to Istanbul. Where? Marina said and closed her mouth. But this is in Moscow, and you said... Yes, Marina. We are now leaving for Moscow. On my car. In any case, it will be faster than on the train. And in our case, even faster than on the plane. The next flight is only in the morning, and by that time... Alexander looked at the clock in his hand. We will be there soon. Go and pack everything you need and leave. How long do we have to go? Marina got up from the bed and fixed her clothes. About 5 hours, if we have time before the Moscow traffic jams. The girl was already heading to the exit, but suddenly froze in place. Then she turned around and ran up to Alexander, hugging him tightly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sasha. If it weren't for you, I don't know how one of us would have managed it. No need, Marina. The man did not have time to finish the conversation, left a gentle kiss on his lips. At first he was confused by her rush, but after a few seconds he answered the kiss, tightly pressing her to himself and not believing in his happiness. The man broke the kiss, as he was afraid that he would not be able to hold back if he did not stop now. And he did not want to scare Marina with his pressure. He knew that Marina would understand that it was gratitude for her trust and an unquiet answer to his questions about their future. And this trip to Moscow was impossible, by the way. Now he will never miss the opportunity that came to him by himself. He knew that he would never let Marina out of his life. Marina was sleeping on the road all the time. She woke up only once when they stopped by a cafe. They immediately went to the police station where they found out all the details of Svetlana's arrest and where the social workers temporarily placed Andriusha before her mother arrived. It turned out that the woman had a mental disorder, and in the background of the last events, she had an acute. The woman was very worried about losing her husband, and after the divorce, she got into a large international company where she met Mikhail and fell in love with him right away. But Mikhail did not pay any attention to her at first, and then he married Marina. And when he boasted that he would have a child, Svetlana switched to active action. At first, she treated Mikhail's mother. Then, having applied her female tricks, she seduced Mikhail and also set him up against his wife. The only thing left to do was to get rid of the rival and her child from the road, which she did, by putting a DNA test on her lover. She had plans for her child Marina, and she wanted to steal him right after the girl was kicked out of the house. But the cards mixed their long trip abroad. When they returned with Mikhail, Svetlana began to act according to her plan. She hired people who were watching Marina and found out what kindergarten the boy was admitted to. But because of his illness, he rarely visited the orphanage, which prevented the kidnappers from doing their dirty work. Then it turned out that Marina sued, and Mikhail decided, not without the help of Svetlana, that if Andriusha turned out to be his child, he would take the boy, no matter how much it cost him. Svetlana decided to wait, but after the truth was revealed at the trial, she got angry and swore that she would not let any village win and destroy her perfect plan to have a happy family with a child. And again, everything went wrong when Mikhail stopped contacting and simply blocked her number. Since he was the director of the company where they worked together, he fired her one day from work and blocked the pass, and forbade the police to let Svetlana into the building. She tried to talk to Mikhail's mother, but she didn't listen to her. As a result, the angry woman decided to commit a crime. As she said in the interrogation, she had nothing to lose anyway. She prepared the fake documents and made an agreement with the people who kidnapped the boy during a walk in the kindergarten. It turned out to be easier to distract the kindergarten worker than they thought, and everything went smoothly. Having arrived in Moscow, Svetlana bought tickets to Turkey, where she had old acquaintances, and then she planned to fly to Europe, where she hoped to hide with the child and then blackmail Mikhail. But even then, her plan was not destined to fail. The flight was delayed for several hours, and the woman with the crying child on her hands began to attract attention. Her nerves were at their limit, and when she started screaming at the waiting room for an innocent child, she was interested in airport staff. And when the woman who looked like Svetlana came to the front, and she was suspected of kidnapping a child, she was already detained by police. Then she had hysterics. She was jumping, biting, and screaming that they had ruined her life. Svetlana was given a sedative shot, and after that, the woman confessed everything, agreeing to cooperate with the investigation. She understood that she was in danger of being imprisoned, but was glad that it would not be a prison, but a psychiatric clinic. After Marina wrote a statement and testified against this abnormal, she hurried to her son, who was still sleeping. Marina lay on the couch, hugged the baby, and hit his head breathing in such a dear and beloved smell. All she wanted now was to forget everything like a terrible dream and never part with her son again. Alexander solved all the questions, explaining the lawyer's details, and went to the room where Marina and her son slept. He involuntarily admired this picture. The two people he sincerely loved were hugging, as if they were each other in this world. Alexander definitely wanted to fix it, become a part of their lives, and protect them from all discontent. And now it's time to go home, he thought, and gently shook Marina over her shoulder. Good morning, Sleeping Beauty, he whispered tenderly and left a light kiss on the whiskers. Wake up, it's time to go. Already? Marina smiled sleepily, rubbed her eyes, and stroked her son's cheek, as if convincing that he is next to her and it is not a dream. Yes, all questions will be solved, Yura, and we all need to rest, gain strength, and leave these terrible events in the past. Alexander gently lifted the sleeping child as if it was the most valuable treasure in the world and carried it to the car, where the child's wheelchair was already installed on the back seat. And, having taken the baby with him, who was still asleep, opened the door to Marina. They arrived. But the girl was grumbling. I thought we would go home. And we arrived at Marina's house. Let's go inside and talk about everything. She didn't have time to think of anything, as Alexander took her by the hand and stepped on the parade doors. She had no strength to argue and resist, and neither did she have any desire for it. Therefore, she strongly grabbed Alexander's hand and followed him, enjoying his warmth and confidence. Now she fully trusted him and knew that he would keep any of her promises, and she did not ask for more. Late in the evening, they sat down at the table and Alexander poured wine into the glasses, offering to celebrate a happy reunion. If you want, Marina, now it will be your home. He decided to move on to the most important thing and not make the girl suffer anymore. She gave him question marks all day, but he only whispered quietly later, not wanting to break their idyll with his son, who seemed to have not noticed that something had happened. I don't want to scare you or pressure you, but I admit honestly, I would really like to be a part of your life with Andriusha, not as a friend or assistant, but as a husband and father. And I will try to do everything so that you will never regret your choice. And if you agree to let me into your life. Alexander sighed loudly. It was obvious that he was very nervous, but it was also clear that he was sincere in his confession. Are you making me an offer now? Marina smilingly smiled and fixed her hair. She wanted to lighten up the atmosphere a little and make the conversation comfortable for them both. Yes, I want. Damn it, I'm sorry. Alexander got up from the table and approached the girl, sitting opposite her and closing her face in his palm. Marina, I can't stop thinking about you since I saw you at the window in that cafe. And when I got to know you better, I lost my head completely. From his gaze, Marina pinched in the eyes. She was amazed at how it was possible to recognize this feeling so beautifully without saying a word about love. She saw his love in his eyes. She felt his love in his touch. She realized his love in his actions and actions. Even the most loud words about love could not convey this feeling that was now flowing from him. Sasha, I love you too, and I agree to become your wife. The man's eyes widened for a second, and Marina thought that she was in a hurry to draw a conclusion. But when a wide smile bloomed on his face, the girl giggled and giggled at him. After a long kiss, Alexander grabbed Marina by the hand and began to circle the whole room, whispering to her how happy he was. But then, as if remembering, he stopped and put the girl on his feet. Of course, I didn't want to make you an offer and I didn't want to rush, but if you want, Marina put a finger on his lips. We won't rush. And when we decide that the time has come, then, she shook her shoulders. To be honest, I'm not in a hurry to get married again. Only without offense. It doesn't concern you. I just want everything to develop not as fast as last time. Okay, I understand. Alexander nodded too. I will make you an offer unexpectedly, and if you are ready for this moment, then you will say yes. Agreed? Stupid. The girl giggled. You have already received my consent. The rest is only a matter of time. Alexander laughed and kissed the girl with a deep, emotional kiss. I love you. Finally getting rid of all fears and doubts. But before you say yes, I need to tell you something. Something that can affect my answer? Marina was grumpy again. I don't think it's something serious, but I'm afraid you'll be surprised to find out that I've hidden something from you. He poked his lips like a spoiled child. I don't want our relationship to start with a slander. Oh my God, I'm already scared. Marina shook her head, but deep down she realized that Sasha couldn't hide anything scary from her. And if you kept quiet about something, it was more for her peace of mind. And she will manage somehow. And he told her that he actually came to the city where they met for business, but not just for a job, but for a check, since he was the owner of the hotel network in which Marina worked. He told how he filed a report about her ex-husband and his affairs, how he got the lawyer to find a breakthrough in this matter, even before Marina agreed to help him, and how he wanted to confess his feelings to her and offer to go to Moscow with him. At a picnic, which in the end did not happen for a known reason. They talked for a long time about the future, made plans and laughed, periodically interrupting each other on kisses and hugs. Marina accepted the news, although with surprise, but quite normally. She admitted that she guessed that he was not an ordinary man, but she could not imagine that he was actually her boss. Now she understood why she was not fired on the day when she did not finish her work on time and spent the whole night in someone else's room. And also, this explained the strange looks of colleagues and their whispers and smiles. He just talked them into it, taking advantage of the boss's position. Marina, in general, could not get angry at him for this, but it was a little uncomfortable in front of her colleagues. When it was time to go to bed, the girl was nervous. She did not know how to behave, but she perfectly understood what it was all about. Alexander pretended that he did not notice her doubts and did not even think about pushing her or forcing her to do something she was not ready for yet. He showed her the guest room, where the bed and towel are, kissed Andrei's sleeping forehead, and, having spent the night with the girl, went to his room, so as not to bother Marina anymore. Alexander himself felt like a teenager on the first date, but he did not want to rush the event. My bedroom is there. Before leaving, he pointed towards the closed door at the end of the corridor. Just in case. He was scratching his eyebrows with his index finger, trying to hide a smile. I mean you and Andriushka. Don't be shy. Wake up. The girl nodded well, having fun with how Alexander was embarrassed. Marina could not sleep for a long time and turned around, but still could not accept a comfortable position. And at that moment she realized that the only place where she would now. She threw away her fears and doubts, got up from the bed and walked down the hallways towards the door. She thought for a second whether to knock or not, but since he said that she could feel at home, she would do so. To hell with the doubts, the girl thought and pushed the door, hiding her breath. Sasha, Marina whispered, are you asleep? No. The man said too quickly and suddenly sat on the bed. Something happened? He asked, hiding his breath. No, just, I couldn't sleep and thought that if I stayed here with you, then maybe I would fall asleep. Her voice was barely heard. But only if you don't mind. If I'm in the way, then no problem. I can leave. Marina whispered quickly, nervous and avenging herself for the courage that was left behind from the trace. Her mouth dried up, and it seemed that her heart would just jump out of her chest. What are you, my dear? Alexander said gently, making a step towards her. And you definitely won't be able to stop me. But if you close this door now, I won't let you out of here. Until the very morning. The man's chest rose from frequent breathing, and it was clear how he was trying to hold himself in his hands so as not to touch her. And don't. Without looking back, Marina closed the door and took a step towards the one she really loved. By untying the belt of the robe, She allowed him to roll down from the shoulder and with a soft rustle to the floor. The next second, she was in strong male embrace, feeling with her skin his hot kisses. His touch was gentle and she dissolved in them, fully surrendering to the power of this amazing man, who gave her hope for happiness and returned to her life the most precious thing she had. That night was full of passion, love, and unspoken promises that they gave to each other, dissolving in greedy touchings and hugs. 3 years passed. Kolya, Kolya, our people have arrived. Let's go quickly. Anna Sergeyevna shouted to her husband, wiping her hands off the front door and pulling him over her head. But finally, running away from the porch, the woman rushed to hug the guests. Andriusha, my dear, you're so big, I can't recognize you at all. She grabbed the boy by the hand and circled him, causing a childish, frivolous laugh. Grandma, let me go. The boy laughed, pulling his claws with his feet and hands, pretending to try to get out. Anna Sergeyevna, he